We're about to see the video of Donald Trump achieving the art of no deals once again today in his utterly demented attempt.
Now it's really up to President Zelensky to get it done. And I would also say the European nations, they have to get involved a little bit, but it's up to President.
The diplomatic efforts to end the war in Ukraine have been thrown into disarray by a monumental shift in U.S. policy, unilaterally executed by President Trump following his summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Welcome viewers to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. This pivot...
They're going to set up a meeting now between President Zelensky and President Putin. And myself, I guess, you know, I didn't ask you about it. Not that I want to be there, but I want to make sure it gets... We'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting...
A shared strategy of supporting a ceasefire to embracing a Russian-backed peace plan has not only created a significant rift between the United States and its key European allies, but has also fundamentally altered the geopolitical dynamics of the conflict. The new approach, which requires Ukraine to make substantial territorial concessions, has been met with a mixture of disbelief, outrage, and profound concern from international partners who believe it rewards aggression and undermines the principles of national sovereignty. The details of this dramatic policy change, as reported by senior European officials briefed on the matter, are rooted in the closed-door discussions held between Trump and Putin. During their meeting, the Russian president presented a sweeping proposal that demanded Ukraine relinquish full control of the entire Donbass region. This condition extends beyond the areas currently occupied by Russian forces, requiring Kyiv to withdraw its troops from territories it has fiercely defended for over 3 years. In return for these concessions, Putin offered a cessation of hostilities along the current battle lines in southern Ukraine and a written promise of non-aggression toward European countries. This offer is viewed by European leaders with extreme skepticism, given Putin's history of breaking international agreements, most notably the Minsk Accords, which were intended to end the 2014 to 2015 fighting. By suspending his previous threats of imposing severe economic penalties if a ceasefire was not reached, Trump has effectively disarmed the very leverage that the Western alliance had meticulously built to pressure Moscow. The swift and resolute reaction from European capitals underscores the depth of the newfound divide. Leaders from major powers like Britain, France, and Germany have vocally rejected Trump's public claims that a consensus was reached on prioritizing a peace deal over a ceasefire. Their joint statement, which pointedly did not echo Trump's rhetoric, reaffirmed their commitment to increasing sanctions on Russia as long as the violence in Ukraine continues. This public contradiction is more than just a diplomatic spat. It reveals a fundamental breakdown in the transatlantic partnership. The European perspective is rooted in the belief that a premature peace deal on Russia's terms would legitimize the use of military force to seize territory, a concept they see as a direct threat to the security of the entire continent. For them, a ceasefire is not a mere formality, but a crucial step to stabilize the front lines and create a foundation for negotiations from a position of strength, not desperation. The fear is that Trump's unilateral action will embolden Putin and weaken the resolve of the international coalition against Russian aggression, potentially paving the way for future conflicts. The ideological underpinnings of the conflict, Putin's root causes. To truly understand the stakes of this diplomatic turn, one must examine the ideological framework that guides Putin's actions, a framework he consistently refers to as the root causes of the war. This phrase, "f0rcing" in Russian, is the core of his justification for the invasion. It is not a pragmatic excuse, but a deeply ingrained worldview that sees the conflict as a defensive response to perceived existential threats from the West. This narrative, while widely condemned by the international community as a fabrication, is central to the Kremlin's public and private messaging. The primary root cause is Putin's long-standing grievance over the eastward expansion of NATO. From his perspective, the alliance's growth into former Soviet bloc nations has encroached on what he views as Russia's historical and rightful sphere of influence, a necessary buffer zone for its security. He considers a free and democratic Ukraine, with aspirations of joining Western institutions, an unacceptable national security threat that must be neutralized. Therefore, his desire to install a pro-Russian government in Kyiv is not just a tactical goal, but a strategic imperative born from this deeply held belief. The root causes are thus a set of non-negotiable demands that seek to fundamentally restructure the post-Cold War security architecture of Europe to Moscow's advantage. This worldview is explicitly reflected in the conditions Putin has repeatedly laid out for a ceasefire. He has insisted on Ukraine's withdrawal from the 4 Ukrainian regions he annexed, a demand that violates international law and would legitimize a major territorial grab. He has also demanded that Ukraine permanently renounce its ambition to join NATO, a cornerstone of its sovereign foreign policy. Furthermore, he has required the lifting of all Western sanctions imposed on Russia. These conditions demonstrate the unyielding nature of his objectives. The irony of his actions is starkly apparent. The invasion, intended to prevent NATO expansion, has instead had the opposite effect, pushing historically neutral nations like Finland and Sweden to join the alliance, thereby strengthening the very organization he sought to undermine. This profound disconnect between Putin's stated justifications and the reality on the ground highlights the ideological nature of the conflict, which is less about specific borders and more about a clash of 2 irreconcilable visions for Europe's future. The immediate and long-term consequences. President Trump's policy reversal has immediate and potentially catastrophic consequences for the ongoing diplomatic and military efforts in Ukraine. By siding with a peace plan that is patently favorable to Russia, he has undermined President Zelensky's position just as the Ukrainian leader is preparing for a crucial meeting at the White House. Zelensky now faces the difficult task of navigating a fractured Western alliance, with his most powerful backer seemingly advocating for a deal that would require his country to make a series of painful and unpalatable concessions. The fear in Kyiv is that this will be the first step in a process of external pressure that forces Ukraine to surrender its territorial integrity in the name of a fragile peace. Beyond the immediate crisis, this development raises fundamental questions about the future of international relations and the effectiveness of alliances. The concept of a rules-based international order, where military aggression is met with a unified and firm response, is being severely tested. If a major power can invade a sovereign nation and then, through negotiations, legitimize its territorial gains without facing significant long-term consequences, it could set a dangerous precedent for future conflicts. The divergence between the U.S. and its European allies over the path forward is a stark reminder of the fragility of these partnerships and the profound impact that a single leader's decisions can have on global stability. The European nations, particularly those on the front lines of the threat from Russia, must now confront the possibility of a world where they cannot rely on consistent American support in the face of aggression. The war in Ukraine is no longer just a regional conflict. It has become a proving ground for the future of international security, and the lack of a unified Western response could have ramifications for decades to come. Historical context and the struggle for sovereignty. To fully appreciate the gravity of the current situation, it is crucial to place it within the long and often brutal history of Ukraine-Russia relations. The struggle for Ukrainian national identity and sovereignty has been a centuries-long process, marked by periods of Russian domination, cultural suppression, and repeated attempts to gain independence. From the Tsarist era's absorption of Ukrainian territories to the forced famines of the Soviet period, Moscow has consistently sought to control and define Ukraine's destiny. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 gave Ukraine a new, albeit fragile, opportunity for self-determination. The country embarked on a path toward greater integration with the West, a trajectory that was consistently met with hostility from Moscow. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the instigation of war in the Donbass region were clear acts of aggression intended to punish Ukraine for its pro-Western leanings and to prevent it from fully escaping Russia's sphere of influence. For Ukraine, the current conflict is therefore not merely a territorial dispute, but a war for its very existence as a sovereign nation. For European leaders, allowing Russia to succeed in this act of military conquest would signal that such behavior is